In this video, we will be exploring the nature of emotional intelligence. What is it, how to develop it, and what are the 3 essential skills that you can start practicing right now to increase your emotional well-being. Let's get started. Hi there, welcome back to our Shine Collective. My name is Liz and we are here to support your conscious evolution. We begin this journey with the Emotional Wellbeing series, which will give you the opportunity to explore your relationship with your emotions and understand how they shape your whole life. No one teaches this stuff in school, so here we will share with you what we have learned about the human emotional body through video lessons, exercises, and meditations for you to engage in as you deepen your relationship with your own emotional body. Emotional intelligence is in part about releasing your attachment to narratives surrounding emotions and becoming the observer of your human experience. Because it is from that space that you gain clarity about yourself and your environment, and you can learn to act rather than react to the challenges you face in life. You awaken to a life grounded in genuine personal power and sovereignty. The whole deconditioning process that is brought forth in this series, and particularly by EI, is not about trying to control or get rid of your emotions. In fact, undoing emotional programming is in large part relating to peeling back the layers of societal programming to uncover your innate and untapped knowledge and abilities. It is about a mutual, respectful relationship with your emotional body. Letting your emotions into your experience rather than trying to live as if they don't exist. After all, emotions are what adds spark and spice to life. We are naturally designed to experience and interpret our internal emotional sensations. However, many of us have learned otherwise, as those who came before us pass along the programming they were taught. We are releasing the beliefs, concepts, resistance, and interpretations of other people and of our cultural systems, and learning to identify how we each uniquely connect with our emotions and the feelings we relate to them. To help you with that, throughout the videos, we will give you cues like this and this to remind you to take a few deep breaths and stay hydrated. So make sure you have a glass of water near you and get comfortable. As you deepen your relationship with your emotional intelligence, you will find a new outlook in other areas of your life, such as improvements in your relationship with your colleagues, your friends and family, clarity about your career and direction in life, and overall better decision making. You hold the key within you to unlock your natural emotional intelligence. So let's find it together as you step into living a sovereign and conscious life. And we'll start by glancing at the physical and social challenges we ought to overcome, namely our brain. Despite its complexity, our brain is a limited machine. Logic happens step by step in a linear manner, but we know reality is not linear, and neither is our world. Our brain does not have the bandwidth to process the vast amounts of information it receives, so it relies on simplifying reality to help us make the next decision. Think of your brain as a search engine, but for the mind, capable of accessing trillions of pages of memories and stored information in our subconscious. It is an extremely powerful tool, but if we can't or don't know how to use it, we're paralyzed. Just as a computer receives, stores, and brings up information, so do our brains every single moment of every single day. How quickly it processes and accurately problem solves data is determined by the neuron pathways that it has reinforced. Now, there are 2 strategies our brain uses to access and process information. One involves creating mental models or simplified schema of reality that tells us how something works. The other one is called somatic markers or emotional bookmarks. These emotional bookmarks are at the core of much of our behavior and how we show up in the world. They fall under the umbrella of emotional intelligence and refer to the strong influence our emotions have over decision-making processes, which ultimately will determine our behavior. How well our minds process and understand information and events are what determines our ability to acknowledge, manage, and express the emotions that arise from what we experience. If we wish to improve our performance and make better and more conscious choices, we ought to master this tool. But for this to happen, we must first come to terms with the limitations of our own concepts. Now, the way we define something becomes our understanding of it. Terms are simply the words or lexicographical symbols we use to communicate ideas. The definitions regarding much of the human subjective experience, such as consciousness, qualia, emotions, and even feelings, leave plenty of room for interpretation and therefore misunderstandings. How we use language not only determines the quality of our communication, but it is also an expression of our way of thinking. Many of us get caught up in semantic narrowing or oversimplification of language at the expense of its ability to describe the nuances of what we experience. So with this in mind, we decided to use words whose original meaning more closely resemble the phenomena we aim to describe. This will be the case for the distinction we place between emotions and feelings. And yes, there is a distinction. You are about to embark on a journey of micro-ego death, where you will be given the opportunity to choose to work at your own pace, to let go of some beliefs about emotions and therefore parts of your identity. To give you some perspective, we combine practices from the second wave of positive psychology using cognitive behavioral approaches and building on meaning, mindset, and emotional intelligence with some spiritual components to create a holistic framework for emotional wellness. After all, we are not just the sum of our parts. We are humans. We are creators. These disciplines are remarkable tools, but when we polarize them, we fail to recognize their brilliance. As it stands, positive psychology often fosters elitism, intolerance, and toxicity. Discovering the neuroplasticity of the brain narrow growth mindset into productivity hacks and morph the rat race into hustle culture. Cultivating emotional intelligence is either associated with being nice or a well-developed ability to manipulate others. Additionally, blind devotion to spiritual practices can often lead to isolation and disconnection from others. The pressure to conform is intense, but self-worth can only be realized from within. In addition, although studying the mind is a global endeavor, it is mostly conducted in English, reflecting the North American context in which the field of psychology emerged. So its conceptualizations of well-being are rather culturally specific, leaving certain experience yet to be described. Even if some concepts are universally applicable, there are many more from other cultures that can help us enrich our emotional landscape, enabling us to recognize and articulate our subjective states to develop a richer interior world and express new dimensions of well-being. Finally, the naturalistic view of the physical world, which presently encases the mind and emotions in the brain, fails to cover the entire spectrum of human perceptions, to recognize the importance of contextual variables, and assumes that Western individualistic culture represents the universal human experience. As a result, many of us are searching for a more holistic perspective on our emotional states. Labels reflect and expand social and intellectual understandings, and the challenge with the word emotion lies on its many interpretations, which ushers the need for a better understanding of emotional intelligence. That is where we will begin. There's a lot of debate surrounding the nature of emotional intelligence. The scientific explanation seems to deviate from the definition often used in popular media, such as self-help books, where emotional intelligence is typically defined in terms of social competencies rather than mental abilities. As it stands, most of the scientific literature regarding emotional intelligence refer to it as the capacity to recognize and manage our own feelings and to recognize and respond effectively to the feelings of others. Having a basic understanding of how we feel and why we feel that way makes us more adaptable at regulating our responses. In other words, we learn to self-manage our emotional states. Most current models split the definition of emotional intelligence into two dimensions, the self and others, and divides them into four quadrants of recognition and regulation: self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, and relationship management. Self-awareness relates to our ability to recognize our own emotions and feelings. This requires us to pay attention to our physical sensations, the thoughts that are running through our minds, and what immediate behaviors we wish to display that are driven by those emotions and feelings. It is important to allow the emotions to be present, to observe its intensity and duration, and to label it. This discernment grants us the power to choose how to respond to what we're feeling. However, none of us lives in a vacuum and therefore are prone to many social interactions throughout our lives. This is where social awareness and management comes in. Social awareness goes way beyond being woke to social and political issues. It encompasses a highly sensitive perception of what others are thinking and feeling, and it often goes hand in hand with empathy, compassion, adaptability, and sharp listening skills. To have healthy social interactions is to understand and regulate our own emotions and feelings, and to hold space for others to do the same with their emotions and feelings in the context in which we are all in. Being observant of our own and others' emotional states allows us the opportunity to influence, inspire, or fine-tune our responses and move our interactions in a more constructive direction. The focus on our behaviors is also the reason why our ability to empathize with others is still seen as the biggest component of emotional intelligence, despite the fact that empathy does not necessarily equate caring for one another. Now, this all sounds pretty straightforward, so why are we not all emotionally healthy humans? Well, mostly because there is still a lack of consensus on what emotions are, which might explain why emotional intelligence is not taught in school and professional training beyond social skills such as leadership, communication, and cooperation. In fact, we seem to live in this odd paradox where there's conclusive evidence to suggest our ability to understand and manage our interpersonal states greatly increases our chances of success, all the while being socialized to ignore and suppress our emotions and still be expected to develop interpersonal skills. Understanding our inner states can give us unique data about how they shape our perception of the world, which is precisely the type of subjective experience we need to learn so we can improve our ability to make choices and form healthy relationships with others and ourselves. We recognize it is important not to focus too much on theorizing emotional intelligence. After all, we are emotional creatures first and cognitive creatures second. We know emotions drive learning, decision-making, creativity, relationships, and health, but we don't quite understand how they do that exactly. And without basic knowledge of this remarkable evolutionary technology we possess, we find ourselves unable to achieve emotional stability in most areas of our lives. We are left wondering, how do we develop emotional intelligence in the first place? Now remember, there is still no clear definition on the nature of emotions. Due to its complexity, experts have yet to reach a consensus and continue researching and updating these theories. But have you ever contemplated what the world would look like without emotions? All forms of art would cease to exist. So too colors, diverse thinking, and with that, conflict, because humans will behave like machines, devoid of values, curiosity, creativity, and passions. Luckily, we do not live in such dystopia, and despite popular belief, having emotions is not what makes us human. As a matter of fact, emotions came into being as part of the evolutionary process, long before there were apes and humans. So, what exactly are emotions? Again, although we recognize the subjectivity of the topic, we have designed an overarching framework that defines emotions as sensory perceptions to help us navigate our individual and collective emotional spectrum. Hence, to build on emotional intelligence is to develop a set of skills that contribute to one or more aspects of our emotional health. These skills can be divided into 3 categories. Skill number 1, emotional awareness. This is the first step towards furthering the development of your emotional intelligence. Emotional awareness occurs when we sense an emotion and/or feeling within ourselves or others. We may not know what this feeling is about, but we acknowledge it, and in doing so, we activate our natural inner guiding system. Our emotions call our attention to the importance of things. Pleasant emotions bring contentment, joy, gratification, satisfaction, and overall well-being, while unpleasant emotions indicate experiences we do not wish to have, the limits of our comfort zone, and therefore, more often than not, our potential for growth. To become emotionally aware is to develop a deep understanding of our own emotions, which in turn will make it easier to use that knowledge to understand other people's emotional states and improve our daily interactions and communications with them. In addition to being aware of our own emotions and the impact they have on us, emotional intelligence inspires us to learn about how to process our feelings, which is the next skill we can start practicing right now. Skill number 2, emotional processing. We have hundreds of thoughts and emotions running through us continuously. And since we are emotionally resonant beings, many of the choices we make are based on how we feel about things. Feelings helps us contextualize our emotional states. They act as narratives, so we feel the same way we think. Unlike emotions, which are meant to be felt and not changed, feelings can be changed by changing our perception of our emotional states. We often tell ourselves stories that we have learned through cultural programming to help us process an emotion in our minds, even if it's not helpful. Think of how crying is seen as a weakness in many cultures, or how women's assertiveness can be interpreted as aggressiveness. The more specific we are in identifying these stories, the more accurate we can be at recognizing an unmet need and taking appropriate corrective action. We humans have a troubled relationship with uncertainty, so when we label a feeling, we move it from the unknown into the known. Even if it's not a comfortable space to be in, it oftentimes seems more manageable as it helps us feel more in control and empowered of our emotional states. Making that choice is what determines the quality of our emotional health and how we choose to express it, which leads us to our third and final skill that you can begin practicing right now to grow emotionally, and that is to choose how to behave. Skill number 3, emotional expression. Our behaviors are the result of our perception of what is happening to us emotionally. A low emotional intelligence limits the number of self-regulating strategies that we have at our disposal. For instance, we display a fixed mindset when we react to others by blaming them for our emotional states, sabotage or deny our efforts, and show a lack of personal power to choose our response in any given situation. On the other hand, people that have developed an awareness of their emotional states are more capable of accepting, processing, and describing what they're feeling, which gives them the ability to manage and express their feelings in ways that promote growth. They develop a better understanding of what triggers them and therefore can anticipate the consequences of what they are experiencing, including how their emotional states influence others. All these skills work together synergetically. Emotions need to be felt, feelings require challenging our beliefs about those emotions, and how well we integrate that new knowledge about ourselves will determine how we show up in the world. When we are emotionally intelligent, we are open and willing to explore and learn about ourselves and others, rather than being rigid and constricted in how we see ourselves and the world we live in. Developing our EI equipped us with the knowledge of how to respond and act to the stimuli we are subjected to versus living from a place of reacting to our environment and circumstances. With that said, if you want to be able to control your emotions, you first need to understand them. And you can only do that through self-inquiry. So to get you started, we invite you to pay attention throughout the day to your inner and outer environment. Take a few minutes to notice yourself in that moment and ask yourself, what is taking place around me right now? What sensations is my body experiencing? What are the thoughts that are coming into my mind? And how am I feeling inspired to act in this moment? Record your reflections in your notebook of choice. I register mine on notes or a voice recorder, and sometimes I choose to journal them as a part of my nightly routine. However you choose to do it, the important thing is that you do it. This is a subtle exercise that can ease you into increasing your emotional intelligence. Remember, throughout our lives, many of us will experience a multitude of emotions, from anger to sadness and rage to joy, peace, and excitement. Emotional intelligence informs us that it is natural and important for us to have a full range of emotions as human beings. We are meant to feel all emotions and not to suppress the ones we don't want to feel. The quality of our emotional intelligence is what helps us understand that emotions are just energy moving through our bodies, but we get to decide what response we will embrace when they arise within us. When emotional intelligence is not yet developed, you will experience life as if your emotions are in the driver's seat of your life. You have been put in the back seat of your own car, and your emotions are weaving in and out of traffic and taking you where they want you to go as fast as they want you to get there. Developing your emotional intelligence puts you in the driver's seat of your life, and the emotions become the navigational system they were designed to be. They are still present with you for the ride, pointing you towards your highest expression and warning you when you veer off the most desired path, instead of dictating where you're going and how you will get there. This is how the development of your emotional intelligence offers you a genuine level of personal power in which you learn to live in harmony with all the emotional aspects of yourself. We hope you enjoyed this lesson and learned something new. If you do, feel free to give this video a thumbs up. It means a lot when you do. And that's it for today. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next week.